our debut episode, and Ray screwed up his video. So you're already ahead of Ray here, Noodles. Hello, folks, and welcome to Got Your Back, NHL edition, LeBrun and Rishaug and Noodles today. Thrilled to be joining Jamie McLennan to the podcast, I believe for the first time. Something tells me Noodles just might have a good Got Your Back story. This man has lived a life, and I feel like if we go mining down deep into the depths, we're going to find something. Jamie McLennan of TSN and Overdrive fame joining us here on the podcast today. And of course, as always, Got Your Back, LeBrun and Rishaug is brought to you by our great friends over at Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals. They do absolutely everything when it comes to the construction industry in this country. You want to build a road? They have what you need, from the survey equipment to plan it out, to the equipment to haul and move the dirt, even the material you lay down to stabilize the terrain. Basically, if it's a big construction project involving pretty much any facet of construction in the Canadian construction industry, Cross Country Canada has got you sorted out. You got a get-her-done attitude over at Cross Country Canada. They do that with a lot of pride. I've been to the head office. I've talked to the owners. They're serious business, but they know how to have fun, as we found out at their Christmas party. Always happy to have Cross Country Canada on as our title sponsor here on Got Your Back. We say good morning to the fellas. Noodles, I like the angle. We see you on Overdrive all the time. It's a bit of a more head-on angle, but I like what you're doing here. Let's take us on a tour, man. Show us the rest of the office.
I mean, honestly, it's 9 o'clock or whatever time it is. It's early. This is my office. This is where I do Overdrive. There's my tie line. There's my camera and all that. I've got TVs in the background, TVs over here. I've got everything covered. When the pandemic hit, as you guys know, it was like overnight. There was like studio at home. Let's do this. And honestly, within 24 hours, I was set up, and my wife helped with kind of the background stuff and threw some masks in there and a giant picture of me actually playing hockey instead of just sitting and watching it with a baseball cap. So it was pretty good. We got it all sorted out. So I'm happy to be at home and have a nice home studio.
Pierre, we need a giant picture of you broadcasting behind you.
No one needs that. It's bad enough that my gigantic head has to be here live on our podcast. No, we don't need a picture of me broadcasting. Maybe a picture of me. Maybe a picture of me in a Dallas Cowboys uniform at Tom Brady's last game. And maybe that's the picture we should.
Yeah, you were. How long have we been rolling here? We've been rolling for 1 minute and 40 seconds. We've already got a Dallas Cowboys mention on the podcast here, Noodles. Is it as nauseating in your other endeavors with Pierre, the Cowboys? He just bludgeons this podcast with Cowboys crap.
Well, I live in Toronto, so I'm around Leaf fans, and Leaf fans are basically, I think, the equivalent of Cowboy fans in the world as well, because those organizations are very polarizing. They take a lot of oxygen up, and in my lifetime, I haven't seen a lot of secondary success type of thing. Although I feel as a kid, I would tell Pierre this. I don't know if you guys remember those perforated half shirts. They were just holes in the shirt.
Yes.
But I had one of a Tony Dorsett one, but I was too skinny fat to wear it.
Nice.
I wear a t-shirt underneath it. So I was like, I had a Tony Dorsett
You
shirt.
did not.
I swear to God, there was a Tony Dorsett three-quarter. I'd wear it to school, but I'd wear a T-shirt underneath it because I'm like, I don't need my gut hanging out. When I'm trying to be so.
My first Cowboys hero, baby.
I will say that I did
Tony
love
Dorsett.
the Cowboys kind of growing up. Tony Dorsett, Tom Landry, guys like that. But I faded away. I'm not the biggest football fan. For some reason, and I don't know if this is good or bad, I always became a big Belichick fan because I like the fact that he was a guy that kind of skirted the edges. They got Deflategate, you got Spygate, you got all these things. I'm like, this guy's trying hell to do everything. So for some reason, I always felt like New England was like my team, even though I didn't really care for Tom Brady. I just was like, it's Belichick. That guy was a no-nonsense guy. So I don't know who I cheer for now. I still want Belichick. He's under the gun right now. I want him to come back and have some success without Tom Brady.
Well, and I have to mention this because obviously I do a weekly hit on Overdrive, and Noodles has always been good to me about my Cowboys fandom. O-Dog and Hayes are all over me. Yesterday, I got completely blindsided. Hayes is welcoming me to Overdrive, and he's like, and we all know Dak Prescott's an interception machine, and welcoming us now is Pierre LeBrun. And it was just like right in the chin before I get on Overdrive, you know.
Hey, can I call you out on something, Noodles? I got to call you out on something here. So you're talking about the similarities between the Cowboys and the Leafs and how in your lifetime, there hasn't been a lot of, you use the term secondary success. I want to point out to you, Noodles, that in the rest of the sporting world, that's just called success. There's no primary success if you aren't winning trophies and going to finals and such. So you've been in Toronto so long that it's now you've created a whole new tier of primary success and secondary success.
Hey,
this is really funny.
Listen, tomorrow is the first day of April.
Mm-hmm.
19 Aprils ago was the last playoff series win for the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mean,
there you go.
I sometimes just mention it out loud because I think that it's like, well, we all know it's been tough, but they've had a lot of good teams. They have had a lot of good teams. 19 years ago.
Since the last secondary success.
I will, it's so funny you're calling me out on it. I think that's how I've softened it over the years. I've been here, I think, in Toronto like 10 years or 12 years now. It's like, not primary or whatever. It's like now we've separated. It's like regular season success and then playoff
secondary success.
Like secondary postseason success. So,
that's not the way it works. That's not how that, Noodles.
We don't just use the word success that they haven't had a lot. And I don't know. I mean, Pierre, you can speak to it. Correct me. When's the last time the Cowboys had any, secondary success?
Well, thank goodness the Cowboys have some playoff wins, including this year, of course. Like I said, they put Brady into retirement.
Oh boy, here we go.
Dak beat Seattle and Russell Wilson a few years ago. And if you're talking championships, it's a long time ago, but they won the Super Bowl in 1995. So not quite. The comparison between the Leafs and the Cowboys isn't quite direct, although I will allow that in terms of the fan bases, you can find some correlation, sure.
That's where I was going. To me, the fan bases are loud and, boisterous type of thing. Like, and I don't know what percentage or layer of it is just I don't mind passion, but I don't know what the word was, like unreasonable would be. It's just like, the refing is always bad. They're always getting screwed. There's always something. So I don't know and I think that's with every fan base, but it just, because there's such big fan bases, there's so much noise. There's a layer of noise, and it doesn't matter where you go, whether it's hockey or football. And you could probably apply that to the Yankees as well in baseball. Mm-hmm. There's just, because that fan base is so big, the layer of secondary crazy, we'll call it, gets a little bit higher.
That's just called crazy. Yeah, that's just called.
By the way,
that is a symptom of not enough secondary success. Is that secondary crazy fan?
I think Leaf fans will finally be happy. I think they're going to beat Tampa in the first round. But anyway, that's a conversation for another day.
I'm grabbing control of the steering wheel here. No shock. Noodles took this thing off the rails. Let's get to the breakdown. Brought to you by our good friends at Kuma Outdoor Gear. They have a wide range of gear to fit all your outdoor needs, from tents to sleeping bags, travel games, pet products, and drinkware. And fellas, are they ever fired up about their new switchback heated chair? I have one. It's sitting right over there. So I'm a camper. I got a fire pit in the backyard. This thing is going to be lights out. It's a heated chair. It's got a heater in the seat, a heater in the back, but it's not one of those great big giant ones. It's just like a nice chill camping chair. It's got the insulated drink holder on one side, and then the game changer for me, you guys, right on the armrest on the right side is a tiny little hook wine glass hangs off the end of it. Like, this thing
Oh,
is unreal. And it hooks up to your phone. It's Bluetooth tech. So if you want to go outside in 20 minutes, you hit go now. The thing preheats, and you sit your high maintenance little tush down into it in 20 minutes time. So this is just hitting the market. They're fired up about it. It's the switchback check.
Why do you get all the free stuff?
Because they keep giving it to me, and I'm
thought
not
we
sending
shared
it to
it
you.
in this
No,
podcast. Oh,
I'm
my
keeping
goodness.
it all. I'm
I
keeping it all.
love it. I'm excited. I'm concerned. That chair would work for everybody in this world except for one person, Jason Strudwick. He doesn't have a phone that is Bluetooth capable, because I think he has a flip phone, and he's got a frying pan for an ass. So I don't know how that would fit into the chair. It would just be a / leg warmer for him. So other than that, the chair would be amazing for everybody else outside of Jason Strudwick.
I feel, so he's my partner, right? On my other podcast, Got Your Back YEG. I kind of feel like I need to defend him a little here, Noodle. I don't like the idea, and I know you're tight, but you piling on to him when he's not here to defend himself, I feel like I got to represent a little bit here. I'm not sure what he'd say to you. It would be sort of a half-witted retort that nobody really understood. So if I could come up with one of those, I'd throw it at you right now in honor of Struds.
I'll give you his retort. Is when I talked about the 3/4 Tony Dorsett shirt where I had to wear a t-shirt underneath, he would go, "You have a body like a bag of milk, and that saved yourself." So he would have chewed on me on that segment. So I'm going to chew on him on this one. Put it that way.
Yeah. An absolute class. I know you guys love having him on Overdrive too, because he chews on the Leafs from Western Canada, which is always good content. Okay, let's get to some actual hockey talk. We apologize for the ridiculousness, but that's how we're feeling here on what day is it? Thursday morning? Is it Friday?
Friday.
It's Friday, dude.
Morning. Yeah, man.
Come on.
I know. I was up late podcasting with Struds last night. So let's talk about the Edmonton Oilers. Struds and I were both at that game last night. So as far as regular season games go, guys, this was one that really had some juice to it, right? The Kings have owned the Oilers this year, beat them both games. Scored 9 goals against them. Their power play had dominated the Oilers. The Oilers' power play was 0 for 7 against the Kings. So against a team they were potentially facing in the playoffs, the Oilers had some stuff to get done. They had they had to throw down some gauntlets last night, Noodles. And on a number of fronts, with Stuart Skinner leading the charge, the Oilers threw down that gauntlet here on the precipice of the playoffs.
I really liked the game. You mentioned it. It had a playoff feel. There was some bite to it. And the one thing I noticed, and I will give Struddy some love there, he pointed out on the broadcast, is, the bodies that Ken Holland has added, there's some meat to them, a little bit of bite. And, you throw in a guy like Kane, who I thought that was his best game of the year. I
7
really
hits in the first period.
Just impactful. And that's what, I thought, obviously in the playoffs last year, McDavid and Draisaitl put a clinic on, but I really thought Vander Kane especially was a huge difference against the Calgary Flames. There were teams that just don't have an answer for him because he's a top 6 guy who can play a different style than most skilled guys. And he imposed his will last night. And it was just, he scores a big goal, beautiful pass by Draisaitl, but it's just scrum after and a little punch here and a little pop there. And, he gets into it with Dursey a little bit. He's after Drew Doughty. Like, you can tell the guys to a man knew what was at stake last night, just like kind of setting a tone going, hey, this is what it's going to be like. And you're not going to get 7 goals on us, although they did give up some chances and Skinner was fantastic. But conversely, I thought Korpisalo was unbelievable. He made some saves in that second period alone. That game would have broken open, especially on the power play. He made that left hand save on Draisaitl. But I thought that in the playoff field, it had some bite. It had a lot of intensity, and both teams knew what was at stake. I would add in that Fiala not playing was kind of a bit of a bonus, kind of last minute, because he's been lights out for them. But that was right from top to bottom, a really entertaining game. And I know the shots were, I think, ended up, 43, 38, something like that. There were chances at both ends. It's just there were people pointing out, well, tight defense, you gave up 43 shots. For me, I thought they did a pretty good job of allowing Skinner some good looks, and he made some big saves at the right time. But I like the game from top to bottom. And I thought the big boys came to play, and I thought their secondary guys were really physical and really played that tight, type of checking playoff style. So it was a really quality game. One of the better ones I've seen in the last while.
42-37 the shots.
I really enjoyed it. I think Louis DeBrusk made this point several times during the broadcast, but the puck battles themselves between the two teams, it was warfare. And you don't see that a lot in the regular season. You can tell that we're about to turn the page to the next season. Obviously, Connor McDavid's shorthanded goal. My goodness, come on, really? I mean, that's just ridiculous. Who did he freeze at the end? I missed the number on the replay, but the second Kings player he freezes at the Oilers blue line. With that last deke before he's gone. Oh my goodness!
I think it was Arvidsson. I think because he got caught flat-footed. But the best thing about that breakaway is if he has a burst of speed, and then he shoulder checks to see how much time he has. That's when he slows up and goes, okay, now I'm going to start to stick handle and move this thing around. But man, what a play. That was a all-world play.
Yeah, that's a great pickup by you, Noodles, because McDavid, that's a move that he uses in the shootout, that insanely fast hands where he goes in slower. And he had that burst of speed, and absolutely, he shoulder checked and went, let's play this one like a shootout. Like he earned himself enough space to go to his A move, which is generally a shootout move. A ridiculous backhand pass from Leon Draisaitl. It's just becoming ho-hum, these backhand passes of his. I do want to ask you specifically about Stuart Skinner, Noodles. So he's doing a lot of this for the first time. I mean, he's not a kid, but he's young into the league here. And so last night, the pressure he faced in that game was probably about as much pressure as he would have felt to this point at the National Hockey League level. Steady, calm, composed, economy of movement, all those things that make him so good. My question to you is, how does a playoff series weigh differently on a guy than, say, a game like last night would have? And what's your read on Skinner's demeanor and ability to handle it when shit gets real? Because it's about to.
Well, I'll be honest, for everything I've seen from him has been growth. And I know there's been, all the focus is on, well, Jack Campbell was supposed to be the guy and he's been a bust, all these things. Pierre, you and I talked about it the other day. In theory, I think this has been what Ken Holland envisioned as far as a tandem. An older guy who has experience in the league and has played that, starter role, even though Campbell played 49 games last year, 7 in the playoffs, so 56 total. But a drafted and developed local kid that, is growing into his own. So if I look at, and this is why I've got to go back to the tandem. I think that in theory, signing Campbell was the guy that you needed because you needed an older guy to play with a younger guy. And it was either Darcy Kemper or Jack Campbell for me that would fit that role because they were 30 plus. Where you've got Skinner, who's 23, coming 24. You couldn't go and get Billy Husso, who played 44 games. And you're like, okay, now you've got two young guys who have to figure it out together. I would much rather have a veteran guy who's a good citizen, well-liked, all of that type of stuff, to play with a young guy. And I use the term safety blanket, where if there's one guy falters, the other guy comes in. That's the traditional tandem. So I look at Stuart Skinner, and he's kind of had this almost like a dream season. He makes the All-Star game. He gets an extension. I believe he had a baby, or he's married and had a baby, correct? Right.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden it's like life changes overnight. But he's handled it well. I think after the All-Star game, there was a bit of dip in his play. And that's where I kept saying, that's when you need Campbell. When a young kid goes, hey, you know what? It's just a little bit too much right now. I need a reset. Or I need a week to just kind of practice and refine my game and my habits. That's the tandem situation. I said this the other day, and I don't know where it would come, but I still think Jack Campbell might play a role somewhere along the line.
Struds keeps saying the same thing too. He's been on that for a month. They're going to need him. They're going to need him. They're going to need him. And we're watching Skinner going, they might not. They might not.
What?
They might not.
You hope that they don't. And I mean, the kid stands on his head last night, and you see him growing as a player,
Yeah.
maturing. I like everything about his demeanor, using his size, his movement, all of that. But he was aggressive last night. Like there was a play where it came left-handed shot. I think it was Kempe, cuts from outside to the inside, and Skinner takes a step out. Is like, come get it. Like, I got you. I've got this. And makes a big save, and he battles for the rebound. You could tell he was dialed in. Now, when the pressure ramps up, there's we have no,
you don't know.
We have no sample size for him.
Yeah.
So if there is a situation where he does falter, you're right. Like, he's going to have a long leash. Don't get me wrong. But if there is a situation where he does struggle, Jack Campbell's got to be at the top of his game, even if it's mop up minutes where it's like, hey, he allows 3 quick ones and you got to stop the bleeding immediately. Like, that's what good tandems do. But Skinner, I think he's the way that I've seen, and just the sample size that I saw last season a little bit, and then this season, he looks pretty well equipped to handle kind of the mental stress that's going to come and the pressure. Believe me, you guys know Edmonton gets pretty noisy, and the expectations are high for this group, and he's going to have to shoulder that.
Pierre, you can take the rest of the morning off. Noodles is just crushing it
No, it's
here,
good.
Calder conversation for Skinner, Pierre, you think?
I get yeah, no, for sure. If he's not one of the 3 nominees, then that's a crime in my mind.
Beniers and Thompson, maybe? Or
I hadn't met Skinner before, and then like a few weeks ago when the Oilers were in Toronto, I made a point of introducing myself to Stuart and came across as such a mature young man. But one of the things that we talked about, because I always wonder how a player, but especially a goalie, will react to this question. But I asked him if, in hindsight, he's now appreciative of the time that he had to develop in the AHL and not being rushed to the NHL. And he said, absolutely. He said, every player wants to be in the NHL as soon as possible, of course, but he now realizes that the grind, all part of becoming a goalie. And I think that position in particular, if teams can be patient, you really reap the benefits on the other side of it. And I think you're seeing that with Skinner.
He's so go ahead, Pierre. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, and Noodles mentioned the piece we did together in The Athletic this week, grading all the goalies that changed teams. Obviously, Jack Campbell fared the worst in that grading. I still believe that Jack Campbell has a chance to redeem himself in Edmonton during this contract. But to Noodles' point, and I didn't really think of it until Noodles made this point, of course, the guys that graded at the highest of our list of the goalie carousel from last summer were Gorgiev in Colorado, Gustafsson in Minnesota. But you can't put those guys in this situation and think that it's going to mesh as well, I think, with a young Skinner, right? To Noodles' point. Gustafsson is protected by Marc-Andre Fleury. You know what I mean? So all these things kind of mesh together. And I think that even though it's been a year to forget for Jack Campbell, the process, the reasoning behind the signing is sound, even if the results have been absolutely terrible.
And the Oilers can kind of, not hide behind, but they can be like, hey, our goaltending costs us 7 and change. Pretty good. We're happy with that, right? Meanwhile, it's Skinner, the one that, by the way, I still can't get over Skinner interviewing this guy. This is how nice he is. He's done this probably 3 times to me this year. So I asked him a question last night. I said, Stuart, you seem really calm in net tonight. Did you feel like you were in the zone right from the get-go? And he goes, thank you. And then he answered the question. So he thanks you for the compliment before he answers his question. It's hysterical. And he did it for a 3rd time to me this season last night. But beloved player in the Oiler locker room, real solid guy. And it's interesting to watch. Okay, let's move on. It's not just the Edmonton podcast. Lots else going on. I want to talk about the Winnipeg, Calgary, Nashville dynamic that is happening. The Jets. Boy, oh boy, the Winnipeg Jets, the way this thing has gone. And now the Calgary Flames are there with potential. Nashville ended up with a tough result last night. But Noodles, what's kind of standing out to you in this dynamic between Winnipeg and Calgary and that scrap for that spot, and just what's happening with Winnipeg?
Well, 2 things. Okay, so let's do Winnipeg first. I mean, Winnipeg, and I said this, and I have to wear this, but I think I wasn't wrong in my assessment I felt at the time. I was in Winnipeg a couple months ago, watched them live, and they, at that time, I think were 5th in the NHL in points percentage. And I think 2 points out of first place in the Central. Like it was that, like this team was, Morrissey was an absolute beast. Hellebuck was stopping pucks. Shifley was scoring goals. Guys got 38 goals this season. And they were doing it well without Nikolai Ehlers. Cole Perfetti, I believe, was in the lineup. So, and Blake Wheeler didn't look like Strutty, like a weathered veteran. It was like all of a sudden, like this whole group was like, they were meshing. They were feeling good. That third line was rolling. Adam Lowry. I had a great chat with Rick Bowness. He's like, I just empowered these guys. They've got a good feeling. And,
they were feeling it.
They were feeling it. And then all of a sudden, it's just off a cliff. And the only thing, because I'm not privy to the conversations in the dressing room or anything behind the curtain, but from me, it looks like the well is poisoned again. And that looks like the last year's Winnipeg Jets, where it was like guys skating around, skating over their lip. I looked at their power play is 1 for 30 in their last 30 attempts. That's not winning games for you. Blake Wheeler had 0 goals in his last 21 games. Pierre-Luc Dubois has 1 in 10. Kyle Connor has 1 in 12. And Mark Scheifele has 0 in his last 10. So all of that has dried up. The goaltender looks human, even though he's not getting goal support. And Josh Morrissey eventually was going to have a bit of a market correction. So you're looking at it, and the only thing that's changed for me is Cole Perfetti's not in the lineup. So he was a guy who helped, slot guys a little bit better. And now you can see when things are great, everyone's dancing around. Doesn't matter who's the captain, doesn't matter, because it's like, I'm getting my cookies, I'm scoring, I'm feeling great. When things dry up, it almost goes back to like finger point and go, well, and that's what I'm looking at Winnipeg, and I'm like, I think they've reverted to last year's Jets attitude and whatever's going on in that room. And to me, it's seeping on the ice, and they got to find a response for it, or else they're out of the playoffs. Because I think I look at Calgary, and Calgary's kind of getting production from guys they've been begging for all season. Yeah. Markstrom looks like a goalie again, like a top tier guy. The only consistent player on that team really all season has been Michael Backlund. And now all of a sudden you're getting Kadri starting to look better. Huberdeau's looking better. Those Walker Dewar kids got some speed. They're infused some speed at the bottom of the lineup. Calgary's coming. So
Jamie, how serious is the concern in what Winnipeg's had going here, Pierre? If your management looking at this thing, it's got to be DEFCON. I don't know if 4 is more serious than 5, than 1, but DEFCON 1 will say.
And I don't even know if it's just about whether they get in or not. Like, I think if they get in and then get smoked in the first round, I think the offseason will look similar either way to whether they make it or not. In that they have decisions to make forcibly. Pierre-Luc Dubois last summer, through his agent Pat Brisson, told the Jets, I don't think I'm going to sign long-term here. So that was already parked. But now you got Mark Scheifele, what's going on with him and Rick Bowness. Mark Scheifele has a year left on his deal. It's not just whether, the Jets want to sign him long-term. Does he want to be there long-term? And the other one, I mentioned this on Overdrive yesterday, and this doesn't get talked about as much, but Connor Hellebuck has a year left on his deal.
Mm-hmm.
Are you really going to let him show up to camp in September on an expiring deal if he's not signed?
Yeah, the exodus might be real.
So this could be a real reset moment for the franchise as far as needing to, and more so than any other team in the National Hockey League, in my opinion, you also have to maximize on your asset management because of the difficulty it is to lure free agents to Winnipeg. So when you're talking about guys like Hellebuck and Scheifele, you got to know, what are we doing here? Because otherwise you got to recoup some assets back for those two players. So again, I'm not saying they're both leaving. No one's told me that, but I'm just reading what's in front of me here and looking at this, and I think there's some pretty big decisions coming for that team. Now, obviously, if they get in and get on a surprise deep playoff run, I always say the playoffs change a lot of narratives.
Oh yeah.
But right now, it's just looking like a team that's going to make a lot of headlines this summer. And I just want to quickly mention on the Flames, since we're talking about potential roster changes. The Flames had some really difficult decisions to make at the March 3rd trade deadline. They were coming off a tough loss to the Leafs the night before, a game that a lot of people were watching around the country. The Flames were in a bad spot. I know for a fact teams were calling on Backlund. They were calling on Lindholm.
Oh,
and boy, it would have been
could you have imagined?
Well, and who would have blamed Brad Treliving for saying, I'm not, sometimes Doug Armstrong with the Blues over the years would say, you know what, I'm not feeling it with this team. And he's never been scared to move a guy. I would not have blamed Brad Treliving for saying, you know what, let's have a little mini reset like Washington did at this trade deadline. But the Flames hung in there and kept their guys. And now they may make the playoffs. I'm just saying it's we tend to overhype the trade deadline and decisions made that day, but some of the decisions that we never talk about are the ones where you hold your cards.
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, you know what? I'm not giving up on this team.
Are they, if they get in, Noodles, are they a danger to anyone if they get in?
Yes, I think they are. I've said this a long time. Like I said this in November. They're built for the playoffs, not the regular season. The regular season is, hey, you don't hit me, I don't hit you. Like, hey, let's have a nice game out here, nothing to see.
Business decisions.
Yeah. Yes, and that's not the way they're built. They're built heavier on the wings. They're built, they want to be grinded out 2-1, 3-2. That's the Daryl Sutter mantra. There's two teams in this league that are a pain in the ass to play against. And I don't think it's I could say more, but just looking at them from the outside, they're both kind of either on the fringe or just in. The Islanders and Calgary.
Right.
Teams don't like playing them because they're just, I say this respectfully, like they just grind you. They're moldy. Like they're just like, man, you want that piece of ice, go earn it instead of like, hey, like it's just, and nobody likes playing the Islanders because they just know it's going to be a certain type of game. Calgary would be the same thing. And if they could make it and the goalie starts, really flying and playing up to his potential, they could be a danger for somebody. And that's why I'm so interested on how the seeding is going to shake out for both, like in the West, basically for both conferences or both divisions. Because I'm looking at it this morning, like, it's still a coin flip. The Oilers could win the Pacific and Minnesota or Colorado could win it, and then all of a sudden Edmonton's playing like Seattle if they end up the top seed. Like, it's crazy.
Could still be a battle of Alberta.
I was just going to say, who's going to say it? It could be Calgary, Edmonton first round. Yeah.
You never know. Hey, listen, moving on here. I like movies. I love movies. I love going to the movies. I'm fascinated. I can't consume enough movies. There's just something so darn cool about Deadpool being in the stands at a hockey game. It's just when, he was there again last night. They flashed the pictures of him. He's smiling and laughing and taking pictures with fans. Like, I'm a big Ryan Reynolds guy. All of his charitable endeavors, the way he runs things, right? So admittedly, now, don't have a pony in the race here as far as ownership goes. It'll be what it'll be. But every time I see pictures of Ryan Reynolds in the stands at an NHL game and fans' reaction, I don't know, Pierre, it just feels like, man, the NHL would really benefit from having Ryan Reynolds stamp on this thing on a regular basis. Just the way he does his things. We're not pulling for anybody, or the process needs to play out. But you got to think the NHL would love to have that guy on this product.
Yeah, well, and you don't have to, to speculate that. Gary Bettman and Bill Daly have talked openly about the fact that it's really neat to have met him, to have him around this thing. They love to have him part of it. Yeah, it's all good. And the NHL never really gets that kind of buzz, right? It's pretty rare. You don't get a lot of, John Hamm with the St. Louis Blues. That was pretty cool when they won the Cup. I remember writing a piece. This is completely on the side here, asking John Hamm during the Cup final for his Conn Smythe picks if the Blues won the Cup. Maybe one of my favorite pieces ever. And he knew all the stats for all the Blues
He
players.
did, eh?
Yeah, he did. But, it would be amazing. And in particular, amazing for a Senators franchise, and let's just call it for what it is, that, it gets so sandwiched in terms of being shadowed by the Habs just down the highway and the Leafs in their province. And the kind of buzz that would be so awesome for Ottawa, I think, to have if it happens. But let's also be clear about the process. Someone's going to bid the most money, and the league is going to be pretty comfortable with that figure. So let's not make it too complicated.
Dollars before Deadpool.
Yeah, I think it's good for the league, and I think there's no downside to having people that have name recognition. And regardless, like I think in Toronto, like Drake kicking around, like it's just there, whether you like his antics or not. I mean, Bieber the
Awesome.
other night at the Leafs game, and him tied to whatever those jerseys they do or whatever, that happy face on that jersey, and that, like, it's good to have star power in your league. And Ryan Reynolds, I think that's what the NHL probably is thinking, is like, regardless of any, ownership group, if you could slide him in there and have a face, have, Deadpool night, have him tied to an organization, there's no downside.
He builds winners. I mean, you look at the telecom company he just sold, the ridiculous money he made on that. He's a marketing genius, and he builds winners. We'll see which way it goes, but that'll be fun. Last one before we get to our sorry, we're keeping you a little long here, Noodles. I did want to ask Pierre about the press conference with Marty Walsh yesterday, and just we don't want to dig too deep into it, but what do you think the headline is of this guy stepping out of the White House and into the NHL Players Association, and the impact that he has the potential to make? What sense did you take away from that yesterday, Pierre?
Yeah, I'll go back to the lead of the piece I wrote on him in The Athletic today, which is that this guy exuded confidence without arrogance yesterday. It really kept coming through me as I listened to him, that this guy knew what he was talking about, was super confident, and yet not that hint of I know it all. In fact, there were a number of topics where he said, you know what, I'm going to have to, I need to know more about that before I have it. Mm-hmm. He really handled himself well. I was impressed. And, a couple of takeaways. One is that he says the players will not agree to raising escrow in exchange for raising the salary cap this summer. So we'll see where that goes, but it looks like probably the cap will only go up $1 million. The other one is I got a bit of time with him alone after his news conference, and we talked about the Arizona Coyotes, and he said, yeah, that's not right. He said, those are National Hockey League players playing in a college arena. Something has to happen there. So that's clearly one of the early ones for him that I think he wants to dig in on. So something to file away.
Players' perspective, Noodles, how do you think they're feeling after yesterday, what you saw?
We had a chance to interview him as well. Like, I agree with Pierre. Right. Very well spoken, very confident. He seemed to not be overwhelmed by the moment at all. Like, hey, you know what, I've done this. Because I asked him, like, kind of point blank, like, do you feel like you need to learn a lot? And he's like, this is, when it comes down to negotiations and stuff, he goes, I've done this for a living for 30 years. Like, I'm not worried about that. Whether he goes, it's iron workers or, coal miners, he said, or hockey players, he said, like, I know the framework of that. But we were joking with him. If Connor McDavid called or Biden called, like, whose call would you take first type of thing, because he worked with Biden, and that type of thing. It was. Yeah, I thought he was fantastic. From a player's perspective, again, I was a player rep. I loved having more information, the better. There were some players that were like, just let me know when we're playing hockey and for how much. Right. I was the guy who liked to dig into it. And he seems like a guy that is very capable and not intimidated by anything. And I loved one comment he said to us. He said, a lot of times the PA and a business, he goes, you don't want to be butting heads. He goes, you're trying to grow the business for the betterment of everybody. He said, I look at this as a partnership and figuring out what's best for this partnership to grow and to continue. Because he goes, if the product grows, it's better for everybody because there's more money in people's pockets. It continues to grow the brand. So I liked his approach. It didn't seem like combative. If anything, it seemed rational. And I look at it, I'm not taking a shot at other leaders, but just the experience I had with them, it was just always like, it seemed like it was combative. And it's like, I'm going to go at it, I think he's taking a different approach. I don't think he's a pushover whatsoever. If anything, he seems like a friendly pit bull, but like that was a guy that I think has so much experience from a player's perspective. You would trust him right away, the confidence that he exuded.
And just a quick add, one of his clear priorities, and I talked to a couple of player reps about this week, and because they said they can feel it too. He wants to really raise player engagement.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Noodles, you were in the players union. I'm just going to call it for what it is. There's just a lot of guys that don't care about labor issues, at least in between CBAs. Let's put it that way. They care when it's time to renegotiate. And so Marty Walsh said it yesterday. He goes, his experience in union is there's usually about 1/3 of the members that really care. And then you got to work on the rest. He goes, I want to bring it way above 1/3 for the NHLPA. And I think players are going to hear from him more so than they've heard from previous leaders, I guess, is what I took from that.
Good stuff. All right, guys, fantastic segment. Noodles, you really brought the thunder that segment, but we're going to keep you around for one more segment because I have a feeling you're poised for some serious secondary success in our next segment.
Oh, yes.
Stick around. Noodles has a story for us. It's story time, and we love story time here on the podcast. That was the breakdown brought to you by Kuma Outdoor Gear. Plenty more to come here on Got Your Back. Stay with us. We want to tell you about a truly Canadian company. Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals provides equipment and supplies to all facets of the Canadian construction industry. But what sets them apart is their get-her-done attitude. It's a core value of their company. I've been to the offices. I've seen how they proudly display that on the wall at each branch. Every one of the staff members lives by the get-her-done formula to ensure they'll never let their customers down. They'll bend over backwards to get their clientele what they need when they need it. They don't make excuses. Cross Country Canada takes great pride in this attitude, and they truly believe that the success of their customer is their success. You can't get much more Canadian than that. All right, time now for Who's Got Your Back, brought to you by Liberty Smart Security, a company that definitely specializes in having your back. High-quality, advanced smart security systems for your home or your business. They use leading-edge technology to protect the things that you value most in life, because your home is your castle. So protect it with Liberty Smart Security. Go to libertysecurity.ca. I've had a Liberty Smart Security system protecting my, I won't call it a castle, Alberta dwelling for the last 7 or 8 years. And it's awesome technology. I love it, and great peace of mind knowing we've got a monitored security system. Okay, Noodles, we love getting people's stories about that time in their life where somebody came through for them. I know you've come through for a lot of the people in your life, but I know for a fact some have come through for you too. So as we throw that out there to Jamie McLennan, give us a story about a time someone had your back, my friend.
Okay. I mean, quick one. Jason Strudwick and I, we were playing cards. I think it was like the Edmonton Expo, and I was the last guy, and I hit like I was supposed to stay, and I hit, and a guy started yelling at me, and he got into my face, and Struddy stood up and was like, "That's enough." So that one was a big one. Yeah. Struddy was like, "That's enough. We won't have that."
Was he friendly or was he menacing when he did it?
No, you know what it was? Is he had this firm look on his face. He was like, we won't have that. Like, and the guy was like, there was some grizzled guy smoking, and like Struddy just looked at him and said, "That's enough." And the guy just, went away, type of thing. So that's a quick one, but I'm going to tell you. All right, this isn't the most flattering story for me, but I will tell you. So we were on the road. These kind. I will say it was exhibition season, so that your level of commitment is
boozy stories.
Context.
Yeah. Boozy stories. Love it.
Context. Level of commitment is maybe a little bit lower in the preseason as opposed to the regular season. So we're out in Vancouver, playing the Canucks, and after the game, we end up going to an establishment, and it ends up being very, very late. And I end up out in Abbotsford.
Wasn't by chance called the Roxy, and didn't by chance have carpet, did it?
It may. I just remember being downstairs at the Roxy, and yes, it was like a glass case of emotion.
There's a downstairs at the Roxy?
Yeah,
only special people get down there. I didn't know. Okay, continue.
Downstairs. So we're downstairs at the Roxy, and it's like 4:00 in the morning, whatever. And as people who know me, I'm pretty good friends with Chad Kruger from Nickelback, and Chad is there, and he's like, "Hey, let's head back to the house." And it's not like his house is just, kind of a block away. Like he lives in a suburb 40 minutes away. And so we end up there late, and all I'm thinking is like, okay, the bus is at 11, 12 the next day. I got to get home, and he's got a rink at his house, so we're on the rink and shooting pucks and doing all these things. And his rink is kind of an underground rink, so it's underneath his house. And
Wow.
we
All
late
the cool
night
stuff happens in the basement.
Dude, that's a rock star's house, put it that way. So, anyways, I tell he's got a driver. I'm like, I'm going to go sleep for a couple hours, but I'm like, I need to be downtown Vancouver by 10 a.m. And I like, please just pick, can you wake me up and take me there? And he's like, yeah, no problem. And I go to sleep, and I get the tap and says, it's 10 a.m. Let's go. And I'm like, what? I'm supposed to be downtown at 10. The bus is going to leave.
By
The bus is
10.
going to leave. And we're flying out to the next city. So I'm like, holy smokes. And I'm panicking. And everyone's sleeping. And, and I like pull Chad's phone, and I'm like, dude, I got to get downtown immediately. And he goes, okay, relax. I got an idea. He goes,
oh boy,
I'll get you a helicopter. So this helicopter within like 7 minutes.
Get you a helicopter.
Within 7 minutes, this helicopter lands in his like he's got this giant, property like right on his front lawn. I run out, and I'm 7 minutes later, I'm downtown Vancouver by where we're staying, and I run over, and I make the bus, because otherwise I wouldn't have made the bus. It would have been an hour to get downtown in traffic. I would have missed the flight to the next city. So the moral of the story is either don't go to a rock star's house, or at least have an escape plan. And if all hell breaks loose, get him to get you a helicopter. So somebody had my back, and that was him. So amazing.
Oh my goodness.
Greatest story ever.
Yeah, that's right up there. We've had some gooders on the pod, but that is right up there.
Now I'm a bit weird about details. Who checks you out of the hotel then? Like where's the rest of your suitcase and stuff? How did that get to the plane?
I landed, so the bus was leaving, I think at 11 or 12. I'm not sure, but I was able to be back in time, go up, change, do everything, and get on the bus, because it was a 7-minute flight. So legitimately.
Okay, so who is your coach?
I can't tell you that.
Okay. Oh, you can't. All right. Okay, so there's only certain details.
I can't tell like certain details, because it just outs like the whole situation. But put it that way, I've never been more scared in my life as a professional athlete. Put it that way.
Okay, right. So Mr. Sutter, you didn't say that. I said that.
It wasn't there.
Okay, good enough. So, did your teammates know? Like, how long did you wait before you informed them? Yeah, I almost missed the bus, so I had to get a helicopter. Like, how did anyone know? How long did you wait? Because I feel like I'd get on the bus and just start telling people immediately.
I bet you waited a year at least.
Or is this the first time?
No. I talked about it, and I have a book for charity. I talked about it in the book, but I just remember, like, I kind of like once everything was good, I kind of was like, yeah, that went south pretty quickly, because I think the look on my face, and keep in mind, like, I had like 2 hours sleep, so I must have been green as a ghost anyways. So,
that's awesome.
I think I waited a day or two once things settled down. It might have been sooner, because somebody was like, dude, like, what did you end up doing after that? How did because I think everyone just assumed you just take a car back or whatever, but it didn't happen that way, unfortunately.
That is a dynamite Got Your Back story. If I had more budget here on Got Your Back, I would buy the rights to Nickelback's song Savin' Me, because it is so apropos for that story. Chad Kruger from Nickelback had Jamie McLennan's back. I love it, buddy. That's great.
I got a new nickname for Noodles.
What's that?
Chopper.
Chopper. Yeah.
There we go.
That's good. That's good. Right on. Great stuff, Noodles. Thank you so much for sharing a dynamite story. Great job on the pod today, guys. Much appreciated. Thanks to all of you for your downloads and your subscriptions. And if you were watching on Twitter or on YouTube, thanks for joining in on the conversation a little bit. Really appreciate your contributions here on Got Your Back. A big thanks to our sponsors as well. Cross Country Canada Supplies and Rentals, Kuma Outdoor Gear, and of course, Liberty Smart Security. We're getting close to playoff time, so the pods are going to keep coming, and look forward to it. We'll chat with you again next week, folks. Thanks, guys, for your time. Talk to you soon. Cheers, everyone.